based on where they occur. Well, let's get the perspective now on these opinions, or remarks, in fact, made by the International Relations Minister and President of the ANC in the country, Cyril Ramaphosa. Bring in international relations expert Dr Kingsley Makhubela. Doctor, very good evening. Good morning, excuse me. Welcome to the program. How significant is it that South Africa is still, since the days of Nelson Mandela, standing in solidarity with the people of Palestine?
Tamegile, good morning. It's an old principle position that South Africa has had, and it's informed by the world's opinion in terms of the two-state system. So South Africa has always recognized the existence of Israeli state and the Palestinian state coexisting and peacefully living with each other. So there's no contradiction in terms of that standpoint.
But how much can it do at this point for the people of the besieged Gaza Strip, where Israel has launched this large-scale offensive? It says it wants to root out, basically flatten Hamas after the strikes the group launched in Israel exactly a week ago. Yet what we are seeing is a rising casualty count. We're hearing reports of hospitals being struck, children and women being killed. So what can South Africa do when you consider that Israel also enjoys the much more powerful support of the Americans and much of Europe?
You know, the statement by the president, you would have heard that, Tamegile, there's no condemnation. He sends condolences to both the Palestinians and the Israelis. And I think that's a deliberate decision that the government has made to appear to be very neutral. But in conflict, you can't be neutral to the killing of people. That's why you get involved in resolving conflict, because you abhor the loss of life. You remain neutral on issues under dispute. So sometimes I think there's a tendency to conflate the two, the question of neutrality and the question of the intention to resolve conflict. You cannot get involved in the resolution of the conflict if you have no interest to save life. And I think the government should become quite open in terms of condemning the loss of life, particularly civilians and so on both sides. And I think the decision by Israel and the language that is coming out of Israel is quite concerning. And I think the government should make a standpoint with respect to categorizing people as human animals and to be dealt with decisively. You've heard that statement from Yoav Gallant, the Minister of Defense of Israel. So these are things that I think the government should take a really serious standpoint. And same way, take standpoint against indiscriminate shelling of ordinary people by Hamas.
So condemnation is all good and well. What people in these besieged areas want to see now is an end to the rockets flying in, flattening homes, the shootings, the stabbings, which have characterized, in fact, the situation in the region for the better part of over 5 decades, in fact, now. Is there anyone in the world at this point who could help to get to a point of peace? The two-state solution has all but gone off the table. Various countries across the world have chosen a side. So does an honest broker still exist for peace?
Well, you know, there are a lot of people who are involved in terms of trying to resolve this conflict. It's one of the most intractable conflicts we've ever seen in modern history. As we are talking, the Chinese delegation is heading to Israel to try to deal with the question of ceasefire, because that's the starting point. I think the Americans, they didn't emphasize the question of ceasefire. There's a build-up of American military forces in the region. The Brits have sent a naval ship. Americans have sent one, and they are sending another one now. It has increased tension. And the fear, of course, it's this conflict spilling over to other parts of the Middle East, what is called a diffusion of conflict. It's possible that to happen. We've seen activities on the northern part of Israel now, the attacks that it's attributed to Hezbollah. So if a new front is to be open, it will create a problem. But there's a galvanized international community that says no to the killing. You may have seen huge rallies around the world that would put pressure in some of these governments that are not taking a standpoint in terms of resolving conflicts. And they are conflating the question of self-defense and indiscriminate punishment, what is now called collective punishment that is happening in Gaza.
The other reality, Dr. Makhubela, is that this situation, while many will think is limited to what's happening now this week, mainly in the Gaza Strip and the rockets being fired back by Hamas into Israel, it is going, likely, is it not, to have an impact in other parts of the world. We're seeing, even in South Africa today, 2 marches are happening, one in support of Palestine, one in support of Israel. You go to London, there have been similar demonstrations as well, and it may very well inspire retaliatory action in other parts of the world. Am I right?
Well, you know, people are speculating that you are likely to see Hamas taking this conflict to other parts of the world. There's no history of Hamas attacking anyone outside their conflict zone. We've never seen that in the past. This speculation that is there. But remember, during this course of this conflict, you're going to find a lot of disinformation to try to up and really increase the tension, to demonize each other. And you can see trying to globalize Hamas conflict with Israel as part of the global international terror that people are speaking about. You're going to see those kind of things, but there's no history of Hamas getting involved outside their conflict sphere.
Thank you very much, international relations expert Dr. Kingsley Makhubela. The South African Zionist Federation is hosting a gathering to memorialize, it says, the murder of Israeli civilians following Saturday's attacks by the Palestinian armed group Hamas. The gathering will offer a platform for South Africans to come together and show support for Israel. Our reporter Zola Shalwana